Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back to the Dogland Podcast. And this is a special episode. This is episode number 300 for myself and obviously my co-host, Anthony. What a crazy 5 years it's been. We literally started this podcast. Well, Anthony started this podcast. I won't take the credit. Anthony started this thing up about 5 years ago, about a week or two ago, right before the 2017 draft. And like I said, what a whirlwind it's been. All the countless guests we've had on, all the great memories we've had, both good and bad, of the Cleveland Browns. And to hit 300 episodes, I know for me personally, it is a quite the milestone. And I didn't know if we'd ever make it this far. I never knew how long we would do this thing, but the fact that we're still doing this 5 years later and now 300 episodes in, it's quite phenomenal. But let me bring in, obviously, the co-host, the man that started this podcast, Anthony Jokey. Anthony, how are you, man?
I am tired. It's been a long couple of weeks. But yeah, we drafted Myles Garrett, number 1 overall that year, and now the player picked number 12 overall is the quarterback of this team, and it's an interesting time. We just had a draft and added some more good talent to this young team, and I can't believe we made it 300 episodes after. I guess the fact we made it after year one means we could have survived anything. So, we could have gone through an apocalypse, I guess, and the podcast would have lasted after going 0-16 that first year. So, it's crazy where we are now. My, how things have changed for the better. Thank goodness. It's an exciting time, and hopefully there's one of those trophies in the near future that maybe we could retire after that one.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that would be that time we just drop the mic and say we're done. But I mean, it's been crazy. Obviously, the first year, which and it's funny because like nobody can go back and listen to those episodes because like if you guys look in the archive, unless there's somewhere, Anthony, on that computer, like the first 40 or so episodes.
Yeah, I got them. I got them somewhere.
Oh, we might need to upload those just because that 0-17 season was bad. And it was like, and I'm pretty sure like we had hopes for DeShone Kizer to potentially be the franchise guy, but man, oh man, things changed shortly after that first season.
I can almost guarantee we did.
Oh, I know I did because I bought into I see the tools, we just get to put some more talent around him, but obviously Deshaun's out of the league and man, things changed quickly after that first year.
Yeah, it really did. I'm just kind of curious going back to look at the roster really quickly here.
I don't know if I want to do
that. just for fun, all right? Here's your offensive and defensive starters. DeShone Kizer, Isaiah Crowell, Danny Vitale, Corey Coleman, Ricardo Lewis.
All Randall those guys Telfair, are out of the league.
Randall Telfair, tight end. Spencer Drango, left tackle.
Ooh.
Joel Bitonio, J.C. Treader, Kevin Zeitler, Sean Coleman, Myles Garrett, Javon Cooley, Danny Shelton, Emmanuel Ogba, Christian Kirksey, Joe Schobert, James Burgess, Jason McCourty, Jamar Taylor, Jabril Peppers, Derek Kindred.
So there's literally only 3 or 4 guys off that team. There might be a little more than 3 or 4, but there's not many left from that team that's still in the league.
No, but their draft class, they had Garrett, Peppers, Njoku, Kizer, Ogunjobi, Howard Wilson, which I know we all had high hopes for, but that didn't pan out.
Nope.
Rod Johnson, Caleb Brantley, Zane Gonzalez, and Matthew Daves.
Yeah. So Days, Brantley, Rod Johnson, and Kizer all out of the league. So it wasn't a bad draft class, obviously, but
about half of it was decent.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, That's usually how it goes. It's about 50% of a draft class usually makes some kind of an impact on an NFL roster. And obviously, Miles and Njoku are still on the team. Peppers is in New England. Ogunjobi's a free agent, but all those guys have made an impact in one form or another in the league. So, kudos to Sashi and that front office because, we gave them a lot of crap for the 2016 draft, which didn't produce much. But that 2017 draft kind of showed that they knew what they were doing and they had a plan. They just obviously didn't get to go through it, which, that news got rehashed over the week, but we're not talking about it because we're not going to do any negative stuff today.
Allow me for 1 second. If only we would have taken another player instead of David Njoku.
Are you talking about TJY or the guy that's already? Yeah. I mean, you could say that.
Could you imagine drafting Myles Garrett and TJ Watt in the same draft?
Yeah, but unfortunately, the way things go, we probably would have had to choose one and probably sent the other one out for draft picks, which wouldn't have been a bad thing because you would have got quite the haul for either one. But that would have been nice to have for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it would have been crazy to have both of those guys long term.
For sure. I think we could do a whole hour of reminiscing, but we haven't done a podcast in the last week or so. And obviously the draft happened last week. So what better way to do the 300th episode than to talk about the 2022 NFL draft and how it shook out for the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, I guess this is kind of where we started. So I guess episode 300 will be talking about the draft.
Yeah, for sure. Thursday night, we all, the Dogland crew, myself, you, Alex, Hale, Caitlin Marshall, Zach Strebler. We even had Paul Duncan, who is rising up as a draft expert, quote unquote, in a Twitter space. We BS through the first round, and obviously it was an exciting one, even though the Browns didn't have a first round pick because there was so many trades, a couple blockbuster trades, AJ Brown going to the Philadelphia Eagles, Hollywood Brown going to the Arizona Cardinals, the wide receiver movement, 6 went in the top 20. But obviously Anthony, Friday nights where things got started for the Browns, and we thought they were going to have pick 44, obviously as their first pick, but lo and behold, the Browns moved back in a trade with it's escaping me who we even traded with, and I probably should have wrote that down, but I'm about to look it up real quick. But they went back.
Was it Houston we traded with again?
I think it was. Let me double check on this one.
We're very professional over here.
We are. Don't worry.
Super professional.
So Cleveland traded with Houston. Anthony, good on you for remembering that. They traded 44 to Houston for 68, 108, and 124. And, a lot of people were disappointed because there was some players on the board. George Pickens from Georgia was definitely the name. I think a lot of Browns fans wanted to upgrade the wide receiver room. But, Anthony, we know with this regime and the history of the last few drafts with the Browns, if there's a trade down of good value to be made, they're going to definitely consider or even do it. And this was no different here, trading back and coming away with having 3 third-round picks and 3 fourth-round picks heading into the end of day 2, going into day 3.
Yeah, not having a first rounder, I'm not surprised they traded down. Sending out those those draft picks for Deshaun Watson. It's not surprising to me that they added more for this year and next year too. The one trade they got a 4th rounder for next year, and then I'm not sure exactly what they got back for Troy Hill when they traded him. But accumulating extra picks because they've sent out quite a bit in capital over the next few years. Like I said, I'm not surprised. So, it's unfortunate, that they had to trade, or it's unfortunate we had to wait so long. But, this front office values draft picks clearly, and leading up to the draft, you heard a lot of people talk. The 3rd and 4th round is like the meat of this draft, and that's why Baltimore had 6 selections in the 4th round. I think it was overall. So, they did a good job in positioning themselves, Andrew Berry and crew, to take multiple selections in those rounds. So it's just, further shows how much they really try to add as much value as possible with what they have. And, they traded down, what do you say it was, 20 slot? 20?
24.
24 spots, and added at least 2 or 3 more players. So, it's just what they do. And if they see players graded the same way at pick 44 where they were, to pick 68 where they got Emerson, it's just not surprising to me that they did that.
Right, and you just mentioned Emerson, Martin Emerson, corner out of Mississippi State. It was the Browns' first pick at pick 68. I think a lot of people were surprised that it was a corner, but Anthony, when you look at the future of the corner room, and I think a lot of people, when they look at the draft, they look at what can they do immediately in 2022, but essentially this team's looking not only at 2022 but 2023 and 2024. And when you look at the cornerback room, yes, we have Greg Newsome and we have Denzel Ward, who we just gave a massive extension to a couple weeks ago. There wasn't much behind them because Greedy Williams on the final year of his deal. Going into Friday night, Troy Hill was going on the last year of his deal. Obviously, the Browns moved him on Saturday for a 2023 fifth-round pick back to the Los Angeles Rams, his former team. So the Browns needed some help and some depth in that corner room. Obviously, they have high hopes for A.J. Green, but picking up Martin Emerson, who is a tall, athletic corner, guys, it fits the mold of what Joe Woods likes in his defense. He's a guy that can play a lot of outside corner, great in zone. He's got, according to Dane Brugler, has quick twitch athleticism, functional play strength, but also shows a natural feel for spacing and disruption in zone coverage, which I think is perfect for a Joe Woods scheme. A lot of people said, well, maybe he's going to be the nickel now that Troy Hill's out. I think he's going to go outside. And when he goes outside, I think they kick either Denzel or Greg Newsome in to play nickel because both can do that. But I thought the Emerson pick was a surprise, but also at the same time, he fits what they want to do in that secondary. So I'm anxious to see what he's going to do, at least starting this year, but obviously moving forward into the future as well.
Yeah, I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is Barry and company do their best to try to prepare at least a year in advance. So with Greedy Williams being in the last year of his deal, with Troy Hill being in the last year of his deal. I know they traded him and shipped him out. Drafting Emerson, whether it would have been, second round, third round, fourth round, whenever they would have taken a corner eventually, the position doesn't surprise me at all. This guy probably has the potential to be a starter, and I'm sure that's what they see him as. Greedy Williams has a lot he still has to prove this season. And if he does prove a lot, they're probably not going to re-sign him because they invested heavily in Newsome being a first-round pick last year. Denzel Ward, he just got the contract, and now Emerson, a high third-round pick who, will be on a rookie deal for the next 4 years. I can't see them spending a lot of money on a third or fourth cornerback per se. So unless Greedy goes out there and just absolutely dominates, but the position doesn't surprise me. So you try your best to prepare a year in advance. And look, there's going to be a lot of competition between him and Greedy. I think special teams is certainly a good possibility in certain aspects for him and what he could do. So, a big physical guy. I like big physical corners. It's nice to have those guys. Especially with the various types of receivers we have in this division. You want a nice big physical corner. So I really like the pick. The more I looked into it, the more I like. So, there's certainly a lot he can do, and I think he's going to fit in very nicely on this defense. And there's really not a lot of pressure for him to perform right away.
No, not at all, because, I mean, you look at it right now, he's essentially the fifth corner behind Ward, Newsome, Greedy, and AJ Green, who I think is going to make even more of an impact than he did last year, this coming season. So, yeah, there's no pressure on him. You mentioned special teams. I think that's a good spot for him to start. And then, obviously, if he's impressing the coaching staff and everything, like, sprinkle him in nickel and dime situations as an outside corner. Like I said, you kick Newsome or Ward inside to play nickel in certain situations, unless they add another nickel in free agency potentially after, obviously in the coming weeks as we head towards mandatory minicamp and everything. But yeah, you don't have to pressure him in. I mean, we're still getting used, I think, to the fact that, some of these rookies can come in and ease their way in. They don't have to be forced to start like some of the past Browns regimes have. And I feel like that's a good thing for these guys. And it's a great thing for Emerson, where he can come in, work, but also learn from guys like Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Grady Williams, AJ Green, guys that have been in the trenches the last couple of years and can show him the way and how to perform in Joe Woods' scheme.
Yeah, it's nice not having that pressure, and I think there's a couple other picks that they have as well where there's really not that pressure right away, and they're going to a team that is really good talent wise and on paper. We talked about how that has to translate, and that's another discussion for another day. But not having that pressure, I think, is the best thing for somebody who has room to grow. All these draft picks do, and Jack, how many times have we talked about like Pittsburgh and how they draft these guys in the second, third, and fourth rounds, and you don't see them until like year 2 or 3 when they start to really develop, and because the playing time has finally opened for them. That's kind of where the trajectory is of this team, because there's so many starters in place right now. So no pressure, and I think there's certainly could be very good things ahead for them.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, speaking of good things ahead, move right along to pick 78. I think there was a strong consensus among Browns Twitter that this was the right pick at the right time. And I say right because his name is Wright, Alex Wright, defensive end out of UAB. This guy, I think this was a great value right where we got him. Athletic pass rusher, something that we needed, regardless of the Jadeveon Clowney situation. I think he's coming back. Obviously, there's things that he needs to work on, but you look at him, he's so disruptive as a pass rusher. Obviously the right size at 6'5", 271 pounds. Like, I think he fits our defensive line to a T. And there's another guy where he doesn't have to come in essentially and have to make an impact day one, because we have guys like Myles Garrett, expecting Jadeveon Clowney to be back. You got Chase Winovich, who they picked up from the Patriots. But there is potential with this guy. And this is a guy that, if he's developed the right way, could subsequently replace Jadeveon Clowney in the next couple years. He has had the injury bug a little bit during his time in college, but, he's disruptive, not only in the pass rushing game, but also on run defense, which is something that the Browns needed defensively up front. So I thought this was a great pick, and it seemed like a lot of Browns fans love this pick as well.
You saying he has the right size kind of unlocked a memory for me. I know you remember Jarrett Wright, the pitcher for the Indians.
Yep.
I had a poster, way back when it said something to the effect of the right stuff. That what you said just kind of unlocked that memory. But yeah, this could be the motto of our podcast for 300 episodes, Jack. Could never have enough pass rushers, right? So
and it's so funny because Barry's motto is you can never have enough corners. So
Right.
Like it's so funny that we're polar opposites, but I think you can never have enough at either position.
Well, the pass rush and coverage complement each other very well, and we've also discussed that too at length on this podcast over the years. So I really hope that Clowney does come back. Much like Emerson, Clowney coming back, I think would take the pressure off of Wright to really perform right away. Um, I'm curious to see what Winovich does um, on this team. Um, if Wright is stout against the run, I can certainly see him out there more often early on. Um, but this defensive line, and we'll talk about the other guy they added here in a little bit, which I can't wait for. This defensive line really needed a boost in talent. Lost both D tackles, starting D tackles from last year. Clowney is, not here yet. I know most expect him to be. So they really needed to pump some talent into this defensive line. They started with Winovich with the trade. They drafted Alex Wright. So there's certainly a lot more that needs to be figured out and role wise on this defensive line. Hopefully, as training camp and everything goes along, everybody can find those right roles, and this defensive line can really be a strength and anchor of this team. They do have one anchor in Myles Garrett defensively, so you hope that more can certainly step up. Whether it be Winovich, whether it be Alex Wright, whether it be Perion Winfrey, like I said, who we'll get to. You hope that these guys can really impact the and disrupt opposing teams, and that's why I really it's imperative that they bring back Clowney at this point.
Yeah, I think they're going to. I think like all the the rumors, that all the insiders are saying it's not a matter of if, it's when Clowney decides to sign the deal. I mean, I think we all kind of expect him to come back at this point. If he doesn't, they really need to get on the phone with Jerry Hughes, Melvin Ingram, gets another veteran in that can uh, accommodate the other side opposite Myles Garrett. But I think he's coming back, and I think, like you said, him coming in is going to, ease the path for Alex Wright. But I still think like come in and put the work in. But I feel like this edge room is a lot better in terms of depth once Clowney comes back, and adding Alex Wright, adding Winovich, and then the other edge rusher that we're going to talk about later on in the draft as well. But the draft talk. But yeah, I feel really good about this pick. Can't wait to see what the plan is with him and how much of an impact he's going to be able to create for the 2022 season and beyond. Getting to pick 99. We knew the Browns were going to take a wide receiver at some point. They did at this pick. This is the compensatory pick they got for Minnesota, hiring Kwesi Adofo-Mensah as their general manager. The Browns took David Bell, wide receiver out of Purdue. This was a surprising pick just because he did not test out very well athletically at the combine and at his pro day. But, sometimes you just base it on the production. And this dude was very productive as a wide receiver at Purdue. He had 232 catches since the 2019 season, which was the most in FBS college football. Anthony, when I look at him, I look at his measurables, I see Jarvis Landry light. And, we've been wondering, is Jarvis Landry going to come back? I just don't see it happening at this point now, especially after the selection of David Bell. I mean, there's still an outside chance. But when I watch him and I see his production, I see his measurables, all his athletic scores, I can't help but think the Browns seen him and thought, we don't need to bring Jarvis Landry back. We can get a younger version of him and potentially David Bell, who I think immediately becomes our slot receiver on this team. And I'm anxious to see what he can do with the likes of Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and whoever else we add, because I do still think we're going to add a veteran receiver at some point during the offseason before camp.
Yeah, I think with Jarvis, the veteran presence would be nice at this point, but David Bell is a much cheaper and younger option. After their selection of him in the third round. The thing with David Bell, Jack, to me, he needs to be a guy who, on 2nd and 5, gets you 6 yards.
Yes.
On 3rd and 9, he gets you 10. He needs to be the guy who can convert first downs for you. He is a player who runs routes really well. You heard Andrew Barry talk about him that way. He's very crafty in the way he runs his routes. So, you hope in those situations, he's able to find the first down marker very consistently. And, the high production and volume that he got at Purdue makes you think that could definitely be the case. So, he needs to be a good comparison. Joe Jurevicius, guy who's always reliable, always had very good hands.
Yeah.
Always seemed to find a first down marker. That's the kind of guy I want him to be. He doesn't need to be a deep threat. They have Anthony Schwartz. They have I can't think of the guy's name. This kick returner that they signed.
Jakeem Grant.
Yeah, they have him as their speed guy. Speed guys. You still have Amari Cooper. So if Bell could be really consistent and really productive in those short yard situations that gets you first downs, I'm all for that. I think that would just be the perfect role for him.
Yeah, and if people don't think he's not a big game receiver, last year in college, keep in mind it is college football, against number 2 ranked Iowa, 11 catches, 241 yards and a touchdown. Against number 3 ranked Michigan State, 11 catches, 217 yards and a touchdown. And then against, at the time, 4th ranked Ohio State, they did lose by 28 points, but Bell had 11 catches for 103 yards. So he gets up for the big games, and I think he's very reliable. And I can't wait to see what the Browns' plan is for him, because much like an Amari Cooper, even though he's not the speed guy, he could play outside. Much like Cooper can kick in inside and be the slot receiver, Bell's versatility that he can go inside or outside. I think the Browns love that, because they do love versatility, whether it's on offense or defense. So anxious to see his role as well, because I feel like, at least with the first 4 picks, these are all guys that I think can make an immediate impact for this team. First 5 picks, let me correct myself, but they can make an immediate impact of some sorts on this team coming this fall.
Yeah, there's certainly some guys that can do that, and I'm very excited to see what happens here.
Yeah. So we go into Saturday. The Browns had 3 third-round picks, and we're at pick 108, and you arguably could say, Anthony, that the Browns got the steal of the draft with this pick, because at pick 108, we were hoping they would take a D tackle at some point, and they were able to get a guy that many were mocking to the Browns at pick 44, and Perrion Winfrey, the D tackle out of Ohio, or not Ohio State, let me correct myself, Oklahoma, which I've also started a trend of Oklahoma picks on Saturday, but Perrion Winfrey.
You got 2 of the 3 letters right.
Yeah, I had to stop myself. But Perrion Winfrey, they needed to add to the D tackle room, because there's not much hope in that room so far this offseason. But they added Winfrey. What a disruptor he is. What fiery energy this dude has. He was on Instagram Live when he got the call and was just fired up. He had a shirt with 3 Dobermans, 3 dogs. It was seems like he had a feeling that he was going to get drafted by Cleveland. And then his Zoom call with the media, he was fired up. He was barking, talking about how him and Myles Garrett were going to dominate and everything. And he's already recruiting Jadeveon Clowney on Twitter. And this dude brings a ton of energy. But what a beast he was at Oklahoma on that defensive line. Won the Senior Bowl MVP. Anthony, this is a dude that can come in, I think, and can be a starter day one for the Browns, just because this D tackle room doesn't have much there. So the spot is there for Winfrey to take, and it won't shock me if come week 1 he is one of the starting D tackles.
I think his personality is not going to let him do anything but come in here and be the starter day one. I tell you what, I've never seen anybody come in this fired up, this excited. Is what he said on a T-shirt yet about he was a dog the day he was conceived? Like, is that on a T-shirt yet?
I'm surprised it's not.
Because most of us as Browns fans, we were that way too, right? We were we were all born into this. So he's a fiery guy. He's a electric guy. Certainly going to bring the energy. Um, unlike somebody else who thought they could bring the energy, this guy seems to actually have the talent to back it up on the defense. So,
Was that a Mac Wilson slight?
Maybe.
He had a good 2021 season. I don't want to hear that.
He did, but
yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about Winfrey and his energy.
Yeah, I mean the way the energy that he does bring, I think is going to be contagious to the rest of this defense. And if this defense, starts to play with like energy and swagger and all this kind of stuff, really look out, because there's a lot of these guys on this defense. I think that maybe his personality can just turn it up just to the next level and really just just change everything and help this defense become just some nasty, dirty dogs that get in your face every play, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like seeing him or imagining him with Clowney and Miles up front, and then whether it's Taven Bryan, Sheldon Day, whoever on that defensive line, like there's a lot of nastiness up front. And, we already had Clowney and Miles up front. You add Winfrey to the mix, and it just gets even nastier. So, but that D tackle room is wide open right now. There's 7 guys on the roster currently. I'd imagine they're only going to keep 4 or 5. So, but I feel like Winfrey, with his energy, with his explosiveness, like I feel like he's going to make an immediate impact. And can't wait to see what he's going to do, because that D tackle room can't get much worse. Obviously, Taven Bryan was a under the radar acquisition in free agency. Sheldon Day was solid last year. But then after that, Elliott and Togiai, who have struggled so far in their early careers. Elliott's definitely on the bubble going into camp, and then there's some undrafted guys as well. So interested to see what Winfrey is going to do. And speaking of, we keep saying we're interested to see what these guys are going to do. Going to the next pick 124. We had a feeling they might draft a kicker potentially in this draft. And they did. They were the first team to draft a specialist. And we were kind of shocked that it was early, but the Browns going to get the best kicker in the draft, Cade York out of LSU. And Anthony, the team is so confident in Cade York. They want him to get all the reps in camp. And so much so they went ahead and cut Chase McLaughlin and Chris Blewett earlier this week. So Cade York is going to be the man at kicker, and the Browns are going to let him get all the reps and all the time to be ready going into 2022.
Yeah, I kind of surprised that they took a kicker this high, but you saw what Evan McPherson did last year for the Bengals, and the NFL can be a copycat league sometimes. I think that they didn't get him. If they didn't draft him here, they weren't going to get him anywhere else in the draft. So, Andrew Berry even talks about how they might have reached a little bit for the value at that pick, drafting a kicker. But, it says a lot that they have the confidence that they released those 2 guys and are going to let Cade come in here and pretty much have the job from day one. I think the most impressive thing was the kick he made last year in the fog against Florida for a game winner, 57-yarder.
I think there was a tropical storm too. I think he talked about that was his most difficult kick.
Well, hey, if he could kick and win, that's great, because First Energy Stadium on the lake, kicking into the dog pound is a different beast. And he said, I think he said the kick wasn't difficult. It was the fact that he couldn't see where the goalposts were. But you hope that this sort of draft pick pays off, and I think this draft pick, Jack, is going to have the most impact on this team, positively or negatively, this year, because you're saying right now he's your kicker from day one. If it turns out that it's a complete disaster, they're going to be scrambling last second to find somebody else. So you hope that's not the case. But if he's really good, he could probably win you a couple more games that the Browns lost last year because of their kicking issues. So I think that York, unfairly or fairly, is going to have the most impact from day one on this team as a rookie.
Yeah, without a doubt. We've seen what Evan McPherson did for the Bengals last year, making clutch kicks in the playoffs, getting them to the Super Bowl. Obviously, the pressure is going to be on York a little bit for that, but the fact is, we talk about the past kickers that we drafted. Austin Seibert, obviously that one was never good, and I think we should have known that it might not work just because he didn't have experience kicking lengthy kicks at Oklahoma. The Zane Gonzalez pick, I think it would have worked. I just think, a certain head coach, decided to throw him out there with a bad hamstring and kind of forced him out because of the pressure. He missed 4 kicks in that New Orleans game. Zane's gone on and has been successful in other spots he's been in. So I think that's more or less on the head coach than it was on Zane Gonzalez's talent. York has the leg. He has the experience of kicking in high pressure situations. He's got the production from all lengths to say that he's a solid kicker. And the one thing I liked about him, Anthony, because he interviewed with ESPN Cleveland Monday morning, he said he was going to reach out to Phil Dawson to learn what it takes to kick in Cleveland. And I think that's right there, that you're a successful kicker. You're the highest ranked kicker Daniel Jeremiah has ever put in his top 150 in 15 years. And the fact that you're humble enough to say, I've never kicked in Cleveland. I'm going to go call up the greatest kicker the Browns have ever had and pick his brain and learn what it takes to kick in this weather and these conditions at First Energy Stadium. I think that says a lot about the kid as well.
Yeah, I like what you posted yesterday on May the 4th, that highlights of Phil Dawson. Let's hope he doesn't have to make those kind of field goals. Yeah, to be a high draft pick as a kicker and to be humble about it and to say you're gonna go talk to Phil right away. I'm not surprised that Phil's not some sort of consultant with the Browns or something to that effect. Just because he kicked here for so long, I think his experience is completely invaluable, to anybody who kicks in the stadium. So, it's exciting to see that, and you really hope that it could work out for you, with him being a high draft pick.
Without a doubt, I think I feel like he's a consultant to a degree, but Phil's got a head coaching gig, I think, in Texas now for high school football. So he's obviously got his hands full a little bit, but the fact that, the Browns can have him reach out to Cade York and help him be somewhat of a consultant, much like Joe Thomas is to the offensive line, it goes to show that, as long as you're good to these players, they'll be good back to the organization in return. Moving along to the 5th round, pick 156, the Browns take Jerome Ford, running back out of Cincinnati. So getting a little Ohio flavor with our Browns draft picks. Jerome Ford, dominant year last year with Cincinnati, over 1,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, 6.2 yards per carry. Also did a little bit out of the backfield. 21 catches for 220 yards. This was a dude that was at Alabama, and then he transferred into Cincinnati and was a big part in them getting to the college football playoffs last year. Very good athlete, 4.46 40, 31-inch vertical jump, 9 foot 10-inch broad jump. Anthony, this is an interesting pick because when you look at the Browns running back room currently, obviously you have Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Dearness Johnson still hasn't signed his restricted tender, so that's obviously something to watch, even though he's in Berea for OTA workouts. Then you have Demetric Felton, who I forget, it was one of the scouts said that Demetric was going to be primarily in the running back room this coming season. So you have 5 running backs currently. Add in Johnny Stanton to the mix. There's 6 backs in the room. So I feel like the Browns are going to be making some moves at that position group over the next couple of months. It's just going to be interesting to see who's going to get shown the door. Because I feel like it's down to, obviously, Felton, Hunt, and Dearness Johnson. So it's going to be something to watch for sure.
Yeah, that room is very full right now. There's no way they keep 5 running backs on this team. 6 if you want to include Stanton or not in that group as a fullback. I have a feeling it might be Hunt, but Dearness not signing his thing yet. There's something to watch there too. I think, Felton was a draft pick last year. Ford is a draft pick this year. It's going to be interesting to see who it comes down to. I honestly couldn't pick it one way or the other, but I'm kind of leaning towards Hunt, especially if Ford comes along pretty strong here, in training camp and in the preseason. I think a team would be there's a select few teams, I think, Jack, that would overpay for somebody like Kareem Hunt, whether that be like a 3rd round draft pick or so. Is probably his value. Hopefully, I guess. I think there's a team that would do that, but I just I don't know how it's going to shake out. Nick Chubb's going to be here. I guess that's the one you could book, but the other 4 and like I said, 5 if you want to include Stan. They have a lot to prove, and the competition there is going to be tough and fierce. And I only see 3 guys making it to that 53-man roster. So this might be maybe the top position battle to watch going into training camp. Center is probably the other one.
And D tackle. But yeah, I would agree with you on all 3.
So I think that's probably the biggest thing to look out for training camp and preseason.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's definitely going to be interesting. I'm with you. I think if you were picking one, you would probably pick Kareem Hunt because he has the most value. He's got the expiring contract, $6 million. John Colosimo of Nothing But the Dogs said, all it takes is one stupid team to trade us a mid-round pick for a running back. So we just got to find that team. So, and maybe they package him with Baker in a trade potentially. I don't know.
Hey, we got Carolina to give us a 4th rounder for a punter. So
this is true. This is true.
There's always one GM out there.
Yes, without a doubt. Moving along, pick 202, the 6th round. The Browns go wide receiver again. They draft Michael Woods, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Dane Brugler had him at his 44th ranked wide receiver in his big board. And he's a 4-year starter, 3 years at Arkansas, transferred to Oklahoma or his senior year. He's not a great athlete, got good size at 6 foot. Just not a lot there. The production's not that great. He had 12 career touchdowns, but he had 15 career drops. So that's not the greatest thing. Brugler said that he has a rangy catch radius, long striding athleticism, but doesn't have special qualities. So, Anthony, when I look at this, I'm thinking Michael Woods is somebody they want to develop. Maybe, he makes it to the final cutdowns, and then they try to sneak him onto the practice squad. But we have Jamarcus Bradley. We have a couple other guys. We signed some undrafted free agents. I just feel like Woods is more or less coming in. They like something from him, obviously. You bring him in, let him compete. You see what he does in preseason, but maybe this is a long-term project at wide receiver that, they want to let Chad O'Shea get his hands on him, work with him, and maybe in a year or two he can make some kind of impact. But I think best case scenario, he's a practice squad receiver.
Yeah, he's probably one of those guys that they'll be able to bump down to the practice squad and final cutdowns and kind of have him floating in between and bring him up if needed. Certainly there's a lot of open competition at wide receiver, I think. And, he's certainly going to be in that mix, like you mentioned with, Jamarcus Bradley. They have Javon Wims listed here too. They do have that one undrafted receiver who everybody seems to like, and I can't think of his name right now.
Isaiah Weston, because
yes.
I looking at just talk about him because that's like the only undrafted guy I really wanted to talk about. With his size, his production, people loved Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, but this dude had just as much production and tested out just like him. The only difference was Isaiah Weston's 25 years old. So it's kind of and there's a reason that's obviously why he went undrafted, because he's much older, but that's another guy that could sneak in. And I hate to say it at this point, looking at the wide receiver room, pending we add another vet, I feel like Anthony Schwartz might be on the bubble this year, which is crazy because he was a 3rd-round pick and it's one of, Barry's draft picks, but he's got to prove something this year coming up in year 2 to make a strong case to make the roster, I think, at this point.
And so does Peoples-Jones. A lot of people thought...
I think people are sleeping on Peoples-Jones.
Well,
that's just my opinion.
I probably, but yeah, I guess it's kind of justifiable because a lot of people thought he'd take a big leap last year after his rookie year. And, it seemed like he was close to taking that next step, but he couldn't really get there last year. And I know a lot of that's based on quarterback play.
Yes.
So we'll see how that changes things. This year with a new quarterback or multiple new quarterbacks, with how things are probably going to shake out. But, there's certainly this whole position group, there's a lot to prove. Even I think Amari Cooper too. I think there's a lot to prove. You saw all those trades that went down the week over, draft weekend with the receivers getting traded for first rounders and whatnot, and Amari Cooper got traded for a 5th-round pick. So I think he himself has a lot to prove too, and has a lot to show everybody. And this whole position group, I think, is really intriguing. And with the quarterback play theoretically improving this year, I think you're going to see a few surprises. And the thing to me with Schwartz, right, and you could correct me if I'm wrong here, last year he battled multiple concussions.
He had the hamstring in camp, which obviously right there hampers your start of your development. And then he had the big concussion against New England, which he missed a month. So I'm not down on Schwartz. I'm just looking at it as a numbers game. He's got to prove something because there is talent in this wide receiver room now. We kind of were leery of it, but, there is some talent in that room. He needs to impress big time, which I think he's going to. He just obviously needs to stay healthy at the same time.
Yeah. And, losing a good chunk of your rookie year to injury is never a good thing. And, they brought in Joaquin Grant to be the special teams guy, which kind of was, Schwartz's end at the moment. So even that spot right now is taken up right now. So, he certainly has a lot he has to prove. I think they'll let him let him be. I with the numbers game though, you're right. It's certainly intriguing with this crew. So, but with the quarterback play improving, like I said, theoretically this year, I think that a couple of these guys are going to surprise us.
Yeah, I think so as well. Our second to last pick was another pass rusher. And Anthony, I thought it was so funny that people were talking about this year. There was a Kobe Bryant in the NFL draft, and there was a Chris Paul, but everybody kind of glanced over the fact that there was an Isaiah Thomas in the NFL draft as well, and the Browns selected him with their second 6th-round pick, pass rusher out of Oklahoma, 6'4" and 7/8, 266 pounds. He's also the oldest draft pick Andrew Berry has made so far because he's 23, almost 23 and a half years old. He'll be 24 come late December, which is definitely the oldest pick. Kudos to Jack Duffin for sharing that data with us. And he was also the 23rd draft pick Andrew Berry had made. So there's the 23 number is going around. So that's kind of weird, but he's not a great athlete, but he's big, he's physical, got after the quarterback with back-to-back seasons where he led the team in sacks, 8.5 in 2020, 8 in 2021, was the team captain. So I think that's a lot. Talks about him as a leadership. Anthony, when I look at this edge room, I think it's set in stone once Clowney comes back. I think it's going to be Miles. I think it's going to be Clowney, Winovich, Alex Wright, and I think Isaiah Thomas makes it as the 5th edge rusher. So you let those 2 young guys develop behind the 3 vets, and you can think of all the possibilities they can do with those guys rotating them in and out.
Yeah, the goal is to have your best guys, i.e. Myles Garrett, be the freshest in the 4th quarter. So if you could have multiple guys that could be in the rotation throughout most of the game, and in those high pressure situations, you could let the dogs loose, and Perion Winfrey can be part of that. There's certainly something you want to strive for. So, like I mentioned our slogan earlier, he's a guy who's going to add to that pass rush room, and you hope that he can get in the mix and force himself into some playing time.
Yeah, without a doubt. In worst case scenario, maybe he doesn't pan out, and one of these other free agents they picked up, like Stephen Weatherly, who's been productive in Minnesota and Denver, makes it, and Isaiah slides to the practice squad. So, I mean, I think that's the worst case scenario, that hopefully he lands on the Browns practice squad and they can bring him along. And, going to our last pick was another interesting one, just because they have Nick Harris, who I think they're hopeful will be the long-term center here after they released J.C. Treader earlier this offseason, and they signed Ethan Posick, who is, I think, underrated in terms of what he did in Seattle, as much crap as that offensive line guy trying to protect Russell Wilson. But with their last pick 246, the Browns selected Dawson Deaton, center out of Texas Tech. Was a first starter for the Red Raiders. I would imagine they like what they saw out of him. He's a bit undersized, which makes me wonder if they have a plan to maybe rotate him at guard as well. So obviously competition for that interior offensive line. But it just might be a 3-dog race for the center position, and Stefanski and Bill Callahan are telling these guys, go out and compete, and may the best man win.
Yeah, and I know you could go back and listen in our 300 episodes that we've done. I know we talked about Ethan Posick quite a bit. I know that was one guy I wanted a few years ago, as a center. So, there's 3 guys in here now that are going to compete, and we talked about the position battles earlier, and center I think is certainly going to be the intriguing one with all the other 4 offensive line spots already locked down. So, it's just to figure out who's going to be, the main anchor of your offensive line, the guy, calling the shots in the middle. it's an important job to have, and a job that J.C. Tretter's done very well over the last few years. So whoever replaces him, has to be good. And I think that the competition between these three guys is going to be pretty tough, and we'll see who comes out on top with it.
Yeah, I definitely think Nick Harris is going to win this competition. I was so impressed with his performance in Green Bay last year, being able to work Kenny Clark, who's one of the best D tackles in the league, and just his athleticism, the way he was able to move, create holes for Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson in the running game, as well as protecting Baker in that game for the most part. So I think he's got a leg up, but it'll be interesting to see what Posick and Deaton do. And, what's the, we always talk about, we think the starting lineups secure, but what about the reserves? Obviously they brought Chris Hubbard back. They have Michael Dunn, Blake Hance, James Hudson. Like who are the reserves going to be on that offensive line? So it's going to be interesting to see all the battles in camp at center. We mentioned D tackle, running back, wide receiver, the job don't stop. And thank God we're not Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski to have to assemble that 53-man roster. But I feel like most of it is pretty secure right now as we head into the summer.
Yeah, I think it is. And, you mentioned the O-line there. I think they're about 10 or 11 deep on the O-line itself. So, when you're, and we've made this point too, Jack, when you're arguing about spots 45 to 53 on a team, you're very good. And, as a team on paper, it's much better than where we were 5 years ago, talking about Deshaun Kaiser being the quarterback of the future. Granted, a lot of his mistakes weren't his fault.
Yeah.
He was put into a very bad situation. But when you're in a completely different position all these years later, instead of arguing about positions 10 through 20, and you're now arguing about 45 to 53. It's a big drastic change that this team has gone over. And, you hope those last few spots really spark some competition in some of these guys. And you hope that some of the reserves can, bring something to this team, and it pushes the starters to do a little bit better in practice and in games, and hopefully it pays off overall. This team making it back to the playoffs after missing it last year.
Yeah, for sure. And you want to talk about the last thing I really want to discuss when you talk about the undrafted free agents, the two names that popped out to me. Obviously, we talked about Isaiah Weston, who I'm enamored with. Can't wait to see his development. The Browns signed 2 tight ends, although these guys have never played tight end. They are basketball players who they're going to try to convert into tight ends. One is Malik Smith, who Buckeye fans should be familiar with, his brother, Tyreek Smith, who got drafted by Seattle this past weekend. And then the other kid from Texas Tech, whose name is escaping me right now, I apologize, but Anthony. We have seen college basketball players make the transition to tight end. Antonio Gates obviously comes to mind because it was right here in our backyard at Kent State. Tony Gonzalez played college basketball while playing college football at Cal. Jimmy Graham did at the U. So it's not unfamiliar for these guys to make the transition. But I think it's fascinating because the Browns currently right now have just Njoku on the franchise tag and Harrison Bryant, that they're willing to take a chance on some of these guys to see what they potentially have as tight ends. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, why not? Why not see if, you could pull a rabbit out of the hat here and one of these guys pays off. And, if they're the third or fourth tight end on this team, a guy who maybe could be specifically used in the red zone. I know the one guy is like 6'7". So if maybe you find yourself a red zone target, that's great. There's no There's no pressure. There's no this guy has to be a starter. So if one of these guys pans out and they're able to even make the team, I think that's a huge success. So I'm just curious to see what the pickup basketball games are going to be like between these guys and Myles Garrett. I'm kind of excited to see some of those highlight tapes if those ever come out. So we'll see.
Yeah, so the other name is Marcus Santos Silva, and there's a great write-up on clevelandbrowns.com about him. He was hoping to go to the NBA. He had aspirations for that. After, obviously, the NCAA tournament was over, NFL teams started contacting him, and he worked out for the Cleveland Browns on Monday and in an individual workout, and he was shocked that they offered him a contract before he could even leave the facility. So the Browns must have been impressed, and there was nearly a dozen teams trying to get his services. So, who knows? Antonio Gates never played college football at Kent State, and look what he did for the many years. He was the tight end for the then San Diego Chargers, and one day he's going to be in Canton in the Hall of Fame. So, not saying Santos Silva is going to be a Hall of Fame tight end, but definitely going to be something to watch because obviously the Browns liked what they saw in the individual workout, and they needed to add some depth to the tight end room behind Njoku and Bryant. So definitely going to be a name to watch during the summer and going into training camp.
And hey, if it doesn't pan out, maybe he could just travel down the road a little bit and play some defense. For the Cavs. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say, Anthony, because this was your podcast when it started. You had me on the first couple times as a guest, and then I think like 5 or 6 episodes in, you asked me to become a co-host. And I just want to say, man, for the past 300 episodes, it's been an honor to work with you. And hopefully here's to 300 more, and hopefully the Browns win the Super Bowl and we can ride off into the sunset after that.
Well, then hopefully it's about like 50 more before that point, or at the rate we're going with how frequently we're podcasting, maybe about 10 more.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
It is.
I think we've had a very good time on this for 5 years. Otherwise, we want to keep doing it. There's been countless guests that we've had on this show. Over time, so I'm just thankful that we've been able to do this for so long and people still listen, and we just get to come on here, a couple of guys talking Browns football, mostly year round, and it's just been a lot of fun, and I'm very thankful for it. So thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody else who's been a guest on the show, and obviously thank you to everybody who's listened to us for these last 300 episodes, which is crazy to me that we've gone this long.
Yeah, man. Thank you, and thank you to everybody that's been on the podcast. I can name them all, but I'll probably miss one like I typically do. But thank you for being on, and thank you to the fans for listening. We wouldn't keep doing this if you guys weren't listening and still listening after all these years. So I think even though we said we might ride off in the sunset when the Browns win the Super Bowl, I feel like we'll probably keep going after that as well. So
you know why, right? Because after the Super Bowl, we still got the draft.
Exactly. So until next time, you guys can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Jokey. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack McCurry08, as well as the Dogland at the Dogland on Twitter, as well as Facebook. And until next time, Browns fans, as we get on out of here, go Browns.